Was this the worst Oscars ever? The Oscars, a night meant to celebrate cinematic brilliance, turned into an absolute disaster in 2025. From shocking snubs to cringe-worthy moments, this year's ceremony left audiences frustrated, confused, and worst of all, bored. So, what exactly went wrong? Let's break down the chaos that made this one of the worst Oscars ever. First, let's start with the Emilia Pérez over-nomination and awkward performance. How does a film land 13 nominations and only walk away with 2 wins? That's exactly what happened with Emilia Pérez, and audiences were baffled. The movie dominated nominations but barely made an impact when it came to actual wins, securing only Best Supporting Actress for Zoe Saldana and Best Original Song. The controversy started as soon as the nominations were announced. While Emilia Pérez had its supporters, many questioned how it received so many nods in categories where it faced stiff competition from critically and commercially stronger films. Social media erupted with debates about whether the Academy was pushing an agenda or if voters had simply been swayed by industry politics rather than the film's actual quality. Then came the Oscars night disaster. The film's supposed big moment, a musical number performed by its writers, was meant to energize the audience and celebrate its nominations. Instead, it fell flat. The performance felt forced, awkward, and out of place, with a noticeable lack of enthusiasm from the crowd. To make matters worse, the segment was abruptly cut short, leaving viewers cringing at what had just unfolded. What was meant to be a highlight turned into one of the most uncomfortable moments of the night, solidifying Emilia Pérez as the evening's biggest letdown. Next was the Dune Part 2. Snub. What the hell happened? Denis Villeneuve's Dune. Part 2 was expected to dominate, especially given the massive success of the first film. While it did win some technical awards, one glaring omission stood out. Villeneuve himself wasn't even nominated for Best Director. This was a shock, not just to fans, but to critics and industry insiders as well. Villeneuve's meticulous craftsmanship, stunning visuals, and masterful storytelling were undeniable, making his exclusion feel like a deliberate snub rather than an oversight. Many speculated that the Academy had grown cold toward big-budget science fiction films, despite Dune, Part 2 being hailed as a cinematic triumph. The film's technical categories saw recognition, but Villeneuve's absence from the Best Director race overshadowed those victories. Was it a sign of shifting preferences within the Academy, or was there something deeper at play? Some even argued that Dune, Part 2's dominance in the technical categories was a way for the Academy to acknowledge its greatness without fully embracing it at the top-tier level. Fans were outraged. How could a director responsible for such a massive cinematic achievement be left out? Speculation ran wild. Was Villeneuve out of favor with the Academy? Or was it just another example of Hollywood politics at play? Regardless of the reason, this snub became one of the biggest talking points of the night, cementing the Oscars' reputation for making baffling decisions. One of the biggest surprises of the night came from the Best Animated Feature category. Flow, a small Latvian film, managed to defeat heavy hitters like Inside Out 2 and The Wild Robot. While some praised the victory as a win for indie animation, others were left confused and even frustrated. Many had expected Inside Out 2 to take home the award, given its massive success and critical acclaim. Some even believed that The Wild Robot, a visually unique and emotionally compelling film, had a strong chance. But when Flow was announced as the winner, gasps filled the auditorium. What made this win even more shocking was how little buzz Flow had prior to the ceremony. Few mainstream audiences had even heard of it, and its availability outside of film festivals was limited. This raised concerns that Academy voters were making decisions based on industry favoritism rather than audience impact. The victory sparked debates about whether the Academy was prioritizing obscure, artsy selections over widely beloved films. While indie animation supporters celebrated, others saw this as another example of the Academy alienating general audiences. Was this truly a deserved win? Or just another sign that the Oscars are becoming increasingly disconnected from the public? Up next was a disrespectful disaster. The In Memoriam segment is supposed to be a touching tribute to those the industry has lost. This year, it felt more like a meme than a memorial. A bizarre choice of upbeat music completely undermined the emotional gravity of the tribute, making the segment feel tone-deaf. Instead of a solemn and a reflective moment, viewers were left distracted by the jarring disconnect between the visuals and the audio. Some even described it as bordering on disrespectful. But the worst part? The omissions. One of the most glaring exclusions was Michelle Trachtenberg, and the backlash was immediate. Fans and colleagues took to social media to express their outrage, questioning how such an oversight could happen. She wasn't the only one either. Several notable figures were missing from the tribute, leaving many wondering just how the Academy determines who makes the cut. This isn't the first time the Oscars have come under fire for their handling of the In Memoriam segment. But this year, it felt particularly careless. For an industry that prides itself on storytelling, the failure to properly honor those who shaped cinema was a bitter pill to swallow. What happened next caused utter confusion. I mean, did anyone even watch this? The award for Best Documentary Short went to Only Girl in the Orchestra, a choice that had many scratching their heads. Critics slammed the film as one of the most inconsequential docs out there, making its win feel completely disconnected from audience sentiment. What made the choice even stranger was how Only Girl in the Orchestra seemingly had no momentum leading up to the awards. It had minimal festival buzz, little critical acclaim, and barely any presence in major discussions. Many were left wondering how it triumphed over stronger contenders, with more meaningful subject matter and broader appeal. This win reignited discussions about how Academy members vote in smaller categories. Some believe that the voting process for short films is far less rigorous, with members often picking a title at random or selecting one based on a familiar name rather than merit. If that's the case, it raises concerns about whether these categories are being treated with the seriousness they deserve. As audiences continue to push for more transparency in awards voting, this bizarre selection only adds fuel to the fire. Was this an overlooked masterpiece, or just another example of the Academy being out of touch with both critics and viewers? Oh my God, don't get me started on this never-ending monologue by Adrien Brody. This man took home Best Actor for The Brutalist. But what should have been a triumphant moment quickly turned into one of the longest and most drawn-out speeches in Oscars history. Brody, clearly overwhelmed with emotion, began his speech by thanking his fellow nominees, the Academy, and his family. But then, instead of wrapping things up, he continued, and continued, and continued. What started as heartfelt gratitude quickly became an unstructured, meandering monologue that tested the patience of everyone in the audience and at home. Even the orchestra's attempt to play him off, a standard signal for winners to wrap it up, didn't stop him. Brody simply talked over the music, determined to finish his lengthy list of acknowledgments. As minutes passed, audience members were visibly uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, and social media exploded with memes and jokes about the never-ending speech. The situation was made even worse when reports emerged that Brody's speech actually caused technical issues for streaming services like Hulu, with viewers experiencing buffering and unexpected cutouts. Some even joked that the Academy should have handed out an award for longest speech ever. Yawn. By the time Brody finally stepped away from the mic, the damage had been done. Instead of being remembered for his incredible performance in The Brutalist, his moment in the spotlight became a cautionary tale of what happens when an acceptance speech goes completely off the rails. The shorts categories are often overlooked at the Oscars, but this year they took center stage for all the wrong reasons. They were a complete mess. The winners were so unpredictable that even the most seasoned awards analysts were left scratching their heads. Critics and audiences alike questioned whether there was any real method behind the Academy's voting process for these categories, as the selections felt almost random. Films that had generated buzz and won major precursor awards were snubbed in favor of obscure choices that barely anyone had seen. Adding to the confusion, some of the winners were so under the radar that they weren't even widely available for public viewing before the ceremony. This lack of accessibility raised concerns about how Academy members were even making their decisions. Did they actually watch all the nominees? Or were they just voting based on brief descriptions or insider recommendations? Social media exploded with frustrated viewers questioning the legitimacy of the wins. Many speculated that voters in these categories were simply checking off names without much thought, leading to results that felt completely disconnected from industry expectations. This bizarre outcome further highlighted the Academy's growing credibility issues. If audiences can't trust that the best films are winning even in the smaller categories, how can they trust the Oscars as a whole? The mess surrounding the shorts categories became yet another example of how the Academy continues to alienate filmgoers with its puzzling decision-making. Now we can't judge the Oscars without analyzing the atmosphere. It's the Oscars for crying out loud, the biggest awards ceremony on planet Earth. The Oscars used to be known for shocking upsets, emotional speeches, and unpredictable viral moments. This year, it felt like a drawn-out, overly scripted corporate event with little excitement or spontaneity. In short, a 4-hour snooze fest. Conan O'Brien, known for his quick wit, was brought in as host, but even he couldn't inject much life into the sluggish ceremony. His jokes, while amusing, were safe and predictable, never pushing boundaries or generating the kind of reactions past hosts have enjoyed. Gone were the risky, memorable moments. This year, it felt like the Academy was trying too hard to play it safe, and as a result, the show lacked any real energy. Even major winners struggled to bring excitement. Many speeches were formulaic, and some felt like they had been rehearsed to the point of losing any genuine emotion. Usually, there's at least one viral or controversial speech that sets social media ablaze, but this year, even the winners seemed restrained, as if avoiding any risk of controversy. Adding to the monotony, the pacing of the show dragged on unnecessarily. Long stretches of filler content, awkward presenter banter, and extended montages turned what should have been a celebration of film into an endurance test for viewers. By the time the Best Picture award was announced, many had already tuned out or switched to watching highlight clips online. The ratings reflected this lack of engagement. Viewership numbers dropped again, continuing the Oscars' downward spiral. With audiences craving entertainment, spontaneity, and surprises, this year's ceremony felt more like a chore than the grand Hollywood spectacle. If the Academy continues down this path, they risk making the Oscars completely irrelevant to mainstream audiences. One of the biggest criticisms of this year's Oscars was its overwhelming focus on niche, independent films while largely ignoring mainstream blockbusters. While celebrating artistic achievements is important, the Academy's reluctance to embrace widely popular films has alienated a large portion of general audiences. This year's Best Picture lineup featured several critically acclaimed films, but many of them lacked the widespread appeal of past winners. Major commercial hits that resonated with audiences, films that dominated the box office and sparked cultural conversations, were notably absent from the major categories. Instead, the Academy doubled down on films that, while praised by critics, had limited theatrical releases and minimal mainstream recognition. This growing disconnect between the Academy and general moviegoers is becoming more apparent each year. In the past, the Oscars managed to strike a balance between artistic integrity and broad appeal, recognizing films that were both well-made and widely watched. But as Hollywood continues to shift away from blockbuster-friendly nominations, the Oscars risk further alienating viewers who feel the awards no longer represent the films they love. Even within industry circles, concerns have been raised about whether the Oscars are becoming too insular, catering primarily to film critics and insiders rather than the movie-going public. If this trend continues, the Oscars may continue to see declining viewership as audiences turn elsewhere for film celebrations that reflect their tastes. With this year's ratings already at an all-time low, the Academy faces a difficult choice. Continue prioritizing niche films at the risk of losing mainstream relevance, or find a way to reconnect with the general audience that once made the Oscars must-watch television. Now enough with the complaining. Let's take a look at the bigger picture. Is the Oscars dying? To answer that, I think it's only fair that we look at the figures, because the numbers can't lie. The viewership for this year's Oscars hit an all-time low, continuing the downward trend that has plagued the ceremony for years. Once considered the pinnacle of Hollywood prestige, the event is now struggling to stay relevant in an industry that feels increasingly out of touch with general audiences. Many factors contributed to this decline, but one of the most significant is Hollywood's ongoing struggle to adapt to changing entertainment consumption habits. The rise of streaming services, the dominance of franchise blockbusters, and the shift toward shorter, more digestible content on platforms like TikTok and YouTube have dramatically altered the way audiences engage with film. Yet, the Academy seems resistant to change, clinging to a rigid format that no longer resonates with the modern viewer. Another major issue is the growing perception that the Oscars are more about Hollywood congratulating itself than genuinely celebrating the best films of the year. The ceremony has become increasingly predictable, with the same type of films dominating nominations while major audience-favorite movies are sidelined. This disconnect has led many to question whether the Oscars still hold any real cultural significance outside of industry circles. Additionally, Hollywood's turbulent year, marked by strikes, financial struggles, and political tensions, cast a shadow over the event. The cautious, almost risk-averse tone of the ceremony reflected an industry afraid to step out of line. Instead of embracing bold choices and engaging discussions, the Oscars played it safe, further alienating viewers looking for excitement and unpredictability. At this point, the Academy is at a crossroads. If they continue on this path, the Oscars could become nothing more than an afterthought in the entertainment landscape, watched only by industry insiders and die-hard cinephiles. To survive, they need to reimagine the show, make it more accessible, and find ways to engage modern audiences. If they fail to do so, we may soon be witnessing the slow demise of what was once Hollywood's most prestigious night. So what now? Well, the 2025 Oscars will be remembered, but not for the reasons the Academy had hoped. Instead of being a night of celebration, it became a symbol of Hollywood's struggle to stay relevant in a rapidly changing entertainment landscape. From snubs and awkward moments to a lack of energy and declining viewership, this year's ceremony highlighted the growing disconnect between the industry and its audience. If the Academy wants to restore the Oscars' former glory, they need to take bold action. That means embracing a wider range of films, ensuring that popular and critically acclaimed movies both get recognition, and reworking the ceremony's format to make it more engaging. They also need to acknowledge the evolving ways in which people consume entertainment and find innovative ways to keep the awards show exciting, relevant, and meaningful. The future of the Oscars is uncertain, but one thing is clear. Without major changes, the ceremony will continue its downward spiral. The big question is, will the Academy listen to its audience, or will the Oscars fade into irrelevance? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the biggest Oscars controversies, make sure to subscribe for more short documentaries like this. We bring you the untold stories, the shocking truths, and the moments Hollywood doesn't want you to see. Stay tuned for more.